Welcome back to Lack versus Hacks. Today we're going to compare two different reports. One report was prepared by another inspection company and the other report was prepared by LAQ for the exact same property. You see, we've noticed a troubling trend in the Jacksonville market where other inspection companies are offering mold assessments for only $150 to $250. And LAQ's mold assessments start at $895. So what is the difference in what you're getting from a $200 assessment to an almost $900 assessment? So what I've done today is I've redacted all of the private information and the photos from both versions of the reports, and that way we can review it together. So I've got Mr. Cheap's report open in front of me right now on my laptop, and when I open it right away, you know, it looks pretty typical for a cover page on a report. You've got your company logo, email address, the inspector's name, their license number. That's not always there, so it's good that he shows that, as well as the client name and address. But what's a little weird about how this report starts is in big, bold, red letters, it says, "No mold detected." It's a little unusual, but you never know. Maybe there was no mold at this house. So if we scroll over to page 2, you'll see that we've got some humidity and temperature measurements for the outside versus the inside. This is good information to know. And then it says, according to the lab analysis, there is no mold growth in the areas sampled. For more info, refer to the lab analysis. And then the very next sentence, it says, although no mold was found in the air, based on damages found on the property from previous leaks, there will be mold found in the walls of the bathroom and around the HVAC registers. Based on experience, we know the mold will be found in these areas, so we recommend following this protocol to properly remediate it. And then it goes on to recommend mold remediation in the bathroom and 2 bedrooms of this property. Now we're both looking at the same picture here, the same page number 2 of this report. It doesn't have any visual observations. It doesn't say we found wet moisture readings in this wall. It doesn't document any actual leaks. It doesn't specify where these leaks are, what caused them. It doesn't show any visible mold anywhere. It has 2 photos. One photo is just an overall picture of a bathroom, and that photo, I know you can't see it, but I can see the original. Sorry about that. But the photo of the bathroom doesn't show obvious visible damages. And then the photo right next to it is a closer photo of an HVAC supply vent. And it does show a little bit of peeling paint around the corners of the vents, but there's no mold in the picture. So, you know, it tells us to go ahead and do mold remediation in 3 rooms. So let's see what the next page is. Maybe it'll expand on this concept. It does not. So apparently this report is 3 pages long. One of those pages is a cover photo. One of those pages has, based on our experience, we believe that, and it doesn't actually specify anything. And then the 3rd page is a laboratory mold spores analysis page, but it doesn't list the laboratory name. It doesn't have a laboratory logo or a company. It doesn't list a chain of custody. And I'm not certain that these results are legitimate based on what we're seeing here. I have looked at thousands of laboratory results and they have never looked like this, where there's no laboratory logo anywhere to be found, no chain of custody. And so, folks, that's what you get for a $200 mold assessment, a 3-page report that recommends remediation in 3 rooms that has no data to back up that recommendation. So let's take a look at LAQ's report. And again, remember, this is for the exact same property, less than 30 days apart from each other. All right, I've got the LAQ report open. Again, this is the same property. It's within 30 days of the other report that was done by Mr. Cheap. And so the LAQ report is pretty similar in how it starts. We've got a cover page, we've got a photo of the front of the house, client name, address. We've got Derek Fisher. He did this inspection and he's our Director of Field Operations. He is licensed. So let's go ahead and move on to, we've got a table of contents actually. So we know this is more than 3 pages long already. We're off to a better start. So let's go ahead and skip to page 3 where we talk about the introduction. So at LAQ, we like to identify who hired us and for what purpose. We think that the context is very important because sometimes these reports are reviewed by attorneys 5, 6, 7 years later. And how many people remember some of these details? I mean, not very many. So we like to include some context of who hired us, who requested it, why it was requested, and also we identify who we interviewed for this inspection, because sometimes the interview provides some really important information. I'm not sure if that was done on the other project by that other company. I'm on page 4 now, looking at the methodology. So at LAQ, we like to explicitly state what we did and what tools we used to do those things. And so we'll do a visual inspection where we'll do an olfactory evaluation. That's just a fancy way of saying we're going to smell your property to see if there's any bad odors. We do moisture surveys. We've identified the moisture meter that we use, as well as the ranges that the moisture meter reports numbers in. Psychrometric surveys, where we evaluate the temperature and humidity. And then we did bioaerosol sampling at this property. And it looks like we did a different methodology than Mr. Cheap did. So just for you to understand real quick, the other inspection company, Mr. Cheap, he did a really common sampling method, or at least I assume he did. He didn't define it, but based on the laboratory results, it looks like he used traditional spore trap sampling. That's probably what 95% of mold assessors use. We like to use a more advanced and newer technology for our inspections. So we use what's called an Instascope, and it provides real-time feedback on how many mold spores it collected when it took an air sample. This gives us immediate results, so that way it can help us either maybe further our inspection or provide some immediate peace of mind for our clients. So at this property, we use the Instascope, and we identify why we took these samples. So Derek at this property, he took what we refer to as a suspect sample in bathroom 1. A suspect sample is collected in an area where we think there may be a problem. Either it might just be a suspected area that maybe you as our client is just worried about it in general. Sometimes these are nurseries where people's newborn babies are sleeping and they just want to make sure it's okay. Other times, these suspect areas, we found visible mold growth, or maybe there's active water damage in there. And so we'll collect a sample there or nearby it. So he did that in the bathroom, and that's in the same bathroom that the other inspector had posted an overall picture of. We also did what's called a representative sample. This is a really important type of sample that every inspector should collect, but very few do. A representative sample identifies what is normal in the residence. So this isn't always possible to collect a representative sample. So like if your entire home was flooded, we're not going to be able to get a representative sample. But if only one part of your home seems to have a problem and the rest of it is non-problematic, we're going to collect a sample in those other areas that's not problematic. So that way we can compare it to the problem area where we took the suspect sample. This provides valuable information, and again, very few inspectors collect this sample. It's really hard to interpret the results without it. And lastly, Derek took an outdoor sample. That's expected. Almost every inspector does that. Every inspector should when they're collecting air samples, because it tells us what's normal right now outside. Some days it's really moldy outside, other days it's hardly moldy at all outside. But either way, the outdoor levels affect the indoor levels because your building breathes to some extent. All of this information is important solely to be able to interpret that suspect sample appropriately. So again, we're really just going over the methodology right now of what we did in this property. And then on page 6, we've got a project map showing the approximate locations of where Derek collected his sample. And then we get to the results section. So we're finally at the meat and potatoes here. Under the visual and olfactory observations, you can see that in the bathroom, Derek observed some bowing and failing grout around the bathtub. So when we're talking about bowing grout, instead of it just being like a flat surface, because of the water damage, it has started to kind of protrude out a little bit. He also saw water damage on some cabinetry in the bathroom, and then he saw some mold inside an air handling unit in the garage. So visually, those were the only problems he noted. During his moisture survey, oh, you can see on page 8 we have a moisture map. This information is so important for people to be able to visualize what areas of their property are wet. It's a difficult concept to know what building materials are wet when they're not obviously wet. You see standing water, in your bathroom and oh no, I've got a problem. But when the standing water is cleaned up, what you can't see is if those building materials are still holding moisture or not. And so that's what our moisture survey is evaluating. This moisture map gives you a good visual of where that moisture is. And so as you can see on page 8, we've got a little bit of moisture around the toilet and then some moisture on the walls around the bathtub. Now, looks like the humidity was within acceptable ranges and the temperature was a little high. And it says because of the HVAC settings, that's usually because maybe the homeowner had their AC turned up a little high on that day. And we are now into the bioaerosol sampling. So if you recall, during Mr. Cheap's inspection report, he had one page 3, that had laboratory results, even though there was no laboratory logo on it. We don't have laboratory results here because we didn't collect samples for a laboratory to analyze. We use the Instascope. So this is how we report that data. There's no third-party lab involved. So on here, we report the data as the total mold concentration, and it looks like the bathroom was significantly higher than the kitchen and still higher than the outdoor results were. So that made the bathroom elevated. We concluded there was an elevated amount of mold in there. And then we have our recommendations. This is on page 9 and 10. So we identify what the cause of this moisture is. It's plumbing related, specifically a pipe leak in bathroom 1. If you recall, that's something that Mr. Cheap didn't identify in his report. The other language there, condition 3 remediation project, it had visible water damage, it had wetted materials, it had elevated airborne fungal levels, and there was visible mold growth in the air handling unit. That's all important information to summarize, not just for you as the homeowner to understand, but also for your insurance adjuster and your contractor, other people that are going to need and read this report. So for this project, we had several recommendations. Now again, Mr. Cheap's report only recommended mold remediation, nothing else. And it recommended mold remediation for 3 rooms. So I'm curious to see what our results were. So we recommend a plumber to repair the failing wax ring around the toilet. Mr. Cheap didn't do that. So if you don't know to do that, how do you know to correct this problem and prevent it from continuing even after the mold remediation's been done? You don't know if you're relying on that $200 report. We recommended to clean the HVAC system. That's pretty typical after a mold or water damage event. It's a good general thing to do. And then we recommend mold remediation. Following mold remediation, we recommend what's called a post-remediation verification, a PRV. And then we also recommend an asbestos survey. Now, Mr. Cheap also recommended a post-remediation verification. I didn't point that out, but that was on page 2 of his report. It was a quick little line saying, get a PRV done when you're done with the remediation. But he didn't identify the clearance criteria for the PRV, meaning what exactly are you measuring when you're doing a post-remediation verification to say that, okay, remediation was successfully completed. How do you measure that? Don't worry, I've got you. So we will keep scrolling in the LAQ report. We are now on page 11, and we are to the mold remediation protocol. This is a pretty detailed step-by-step guide for restoration companies to follow. So we have general remediation practices, things like wear PPE, don't run the air conditioning system in the contained area, things like that. But then we have site-specific recommendations, which can be found on page 13. And lo and behold, our recommendations include remediation for 1 room. The other company recommended 3 rooms for remediation. Something you may or may not know is that mold remediation is expensive. It can be thousands of dollars for a single room because it's a lot of labor for these remediation companies to go in if they have to remove building materials, install containment barriers, they're using equipment, then they have to spend hours upon hours cleaning the property. do that times 3 rooms, and we've got triple the cost of what it would be for LAQ's protocol. If you follow LAQ's protocol, you're only doing a 1-room remediation because Derek didn't find issues in those other 2 bedrooms that Mr. Cheap called for with his report. So in our protocol, we're recommending to detach the bathtub, the vanity, and the toilet. We're recommending to remove some of that wall around the bathtub, and then we recommend installing air filtration devices, dehumidifiers, and then to do detailed cleaning in that room as well. These are pretty typical things that we would recommend in a room that has water damage like what this house had. But it will probably cost the homeowner several thousands of dollars. So it's a good thing it's limited to only 1 room here. Our report includes a lot of other information like what to do if you find hidden mold during remediation. How should you proceed? Well, we recommend proceeding with the IICRC S520, which is the standard for professional mold remediation. But if you want additional guidance, you can always call us and we'll be happy to provide it. We recommend not to occupy those areas during remediation. That's for everybody's health and safety. And then we get to another part that Mr. Cheap did not include that is very critical to mold remediation projects, and that is all about the post-remediation verification. So when we recommend what we refer to as a PRV, that is basically a final check to make sure that the restoration company did everything they needed to do to remove the mold contamination and resolve the moisture problems that caused the mold. A lot of people would think that restoration companies should be able to know when they're done and be able to just call it a day at that and not need any third-party involvement to confirm it. But our experience and many other homeowners' experiences are that you need that third-party check. It's really hard to grade your own tests if you're counting on a pass. And so unfortunately, restoration companies are in this position. It's hard for them to grade their own work. So we will come in, and when we're doing a PRV, we have clearance criteria that we're following to make sure that the restoration company did it. That clearance criteria is that the containment barriers should be sealed in such a way that prevents cross-contamination. There shouldn't be any openings in that containment that would also cause cross-contamination. You should have air filtration devices installed in the work areas as well as dehumidifiers. And most importantly, single-handedly, this is the most important line in the clearance criteria. Contained areas should be clear of excess dust, debris, and visible mold growth. Those are the 3 most important things on a PRV, no matter who does it. And lastly, any sort of samples we collect, whether it's air samples, swab samples, doesn't matter, those should reflect that the job site has returned to what's called a normal fungal ecology. A normal fungal ecology kind of is a weird phrase, but if you live in Florida, you know mold is everywhere. I mean, we live in a wet, moldy, damp, nasty kind of state sometimes. The humidity here is insane. So when I talked about earlier how the outside air is going to have some mold, you know, some days it's really high, some days it's a really low mold day. It's the same thing when we collect air samples inside. So we don't say that the air samples should be completely free of mold, but it should be similar amounts and types of mold as to what you would find outside, as well as that representative area outside of the work area, but still inside the home. So it should be similar. None of this information was specified by Mr. Cheap. And so would you have even known that you needed a detailed PRV if you were relying on his report? And what if he came out and he said it's not a pass? How would you know it wasn't really a pass? He didn't identify what the scoring rubric was before doing it. So back to the LAQ report. We have some health and safety considerations here too on page 15. I'm just gonna kind of scroll through that. Most people aren't too into that section. We've got a signature here that also identifies Derek's credentials as well as my credentials, because at LAQ, every single report is reviewed by me. I'm a certified industrial hygienist. I have years of experience. I have reviewed thousands of reports, and I've also done a ton of inspections myself. And so at LAQ, we have that final check to make sure that everything is how it should be. Derek's pretty good at his job, like really, really good at his job. We have tons of Google reviews that will show you how happy his customers are. But we still want to make sure that another person's checking that all of this is in line and correct. I don't think Mr. Cheap has that. And then we've got our certifications and licensure. I've got actual copies here of Derek's, his certifications, his license, moisture measurements, and photos of what we found. The photos really tell a big story, and Mr. Cheap's inspection only had those 2 photos, the one of the bathroom and the one of the damaged vent. Why didn't it have any moisture measurements? I mean, moisture is what causes mold. And why didn't it have photos of that damaged tile? That seems like something that would be pretty easy to capture. I don't understand why he chose to show the vent, but not the damaged tile. I know you can't see the photos in our report, so again, sorry about that, but in our report, we have the photo of the front of the house, and then if we scroll to the bathroom photos, we have the overall photo of the bathroom, and then we have the close-up photos of these areas that were damaged, as well as the moisture readings that show that there's elevated moisture in this property, and that's a problem. We also have pictures of the other 2 bedrooms, and that's really just to show that Derek checked it. So if you're looking at the screen, you'll see we have an overall photo of bedroom 1, and then another overall photo of bedroom 2. There's no other photos because there wasn't anything else really to document. The materials were dry, there weren't any problematic visual observations, we didn't see any mold, anything like that. And then lastly, in the garage, he has the pictures of inside the air handling unit. I don't think Mr. Cheap even opened up the air handling unit. He didn't reference it, he didn't note all of the mold in it. And I know you can't see the photo, but I can, and it's pretty moldy inside. That's something that if you as a homeowner are paying for a mold assessment, I feel like you would probably care about your air handling unit because that is the lungs of your building. You want to make sure your lungs are clear. And so we want to make sure of that too. Derek made sure of it, Mr. Cheap didn't. So that's the end of the LAQ report. I hope this video has highlighted the differences and what you get when you're paying almost $900 for LAQ versus $200 for Mr. Cheap. But at a bare minimum, I want you to understand that this homeowner saved thousands of dollars by only needing to remediate his bathroom and not the other 2 bedrooms. If that's all you remember from this video, then I feel like I've done my job.